in general, when would be the best time to launch, like to officially open doors to a program? What part of the phase would be best to like host a masterclass, let's say?
Okay, hosting masterclass, I would definitely say around that ovulation, like your peak energy, again, speaking, you want to be social, tapping into that. Launch, I think, could kind of vary. So if your launch includes more like back end side of things, not a lot of face-to-face time, then I don't think it's that specific. But if you know, okay, when I launch, I'm going to have a lot of calls coming in, I'm going to have applications, I'm going to need to be communicating a lot, I would leave that for like my follicular and my ovulatory phase, where I can really tap in again to my energy and be more social, be able to show up for people. And we said like follicular phase, going after those new clients, getting on calls and things. So I would really say follicular and ovulatory phase for true launch.
Being limitless is knowing your success and your growth are built on a radical belief in yourself. Limitless is honoring your purpose, your health, and impact above all else. Limitless is never playing small, because the more alive you feel in your life, the more growth and success you attract. Hi, my name is Jamie Raterman, and I am a holistic business coach, meaning I am just as invested in growing your health as I am in growing your wealth. With 11 plus years in brand and social media marketing, I help rebellious entrepreneurs master marketing, embody leadership, and say fuck it to the hustle. This show is here to encourage you to become more radically aware of your self-imposed limits, to break free of your shoulds, and to expand your brand into a movement led by you. Hello, lovelies. Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Podcast. I am geeking out today. I'm really excited because I have a fellow health geek with me, even more. She's probably more of a health geek than I could say that I am, but in particular, this is a subject that comes up all of the time. And now we have a resident expert to tell us a little bit more about why this is so important to us. So today on the podcast, we have Norah Candito. She is a registered dietitian, specifically specializing in gut and hormones. And also too, she's going to be talking to us a little bit about, for us menstruating entrepreneurs, how we have a superpower that can be a tool that can help us have the energy levels, the focus, the clarity that we want to have in our month to month. But I'm so excited to have Norah here. I met Norah, she came through a sprint, but I met her through Diana Davis, who is, a business bestie, of course. But Norah and I recently got to spend some time with each other in Central Park, and a lot of health talk. And we realized that if we didn't stop ourselves, we would be talking about it into the evening. But so I was like, you know what? Why don't we have Norah come on the podcast so we can geek out as long as we want to? Norah, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me, Jamie. Yes, absolutely. Love to nerd out and talk about all these things and just spread awareness. Like, I think these topics are becoming more and more in vogue, and I'm really excited to be leading a lot of these conversations, but it's so important, and I'm excited to share this news with everyone today.
I'm so excited. So I told everyone a little bit about you, but you've been the one that's gone through this whole journey. Tell us a little bit about your story and why you decided entrepreneurship was right for you.
Yeah. So I was already on track to become a registered dietitian, but I envisioned myself working in a hospital setting for a few years, moving to an outpatient setting, and then maybe working in private practice. And my story went anything but how I anticipated it. And if anyone out there is a fellow type A organized planning person, shape-shifting that kind of life plan maybe wasn't what I would have chosen, but every single experience led me to where I am now. And that did lead me to going off on my own. So I opened my own private practice in the beginning of 2022, which is so hard to believe that it's been a little bit over a year already now. And it's
I can't believe your 1 year anniversary. I didn't realize that. Congrats.
Thank
1 year
you.
of entrepreneurship is such a big deal.
Yeah. And I did not also anticipate it to go this well. So I feel really grateful, very, very fortunate and excited. I love the ability to be so creative in this role. And I love how we can really shape shift and just cater to what people truly need. We're not limited by a job description. If I wanted to pivot today and help support people because I'm hearing more and more of something that is needed, I can do that. And it makes me so excited to do the work that I get to do and just helping create such an impact for people. So it's been fun learning so much every day, not just nutrition related, like how to run a freaking business.
It's not simple, but it is rewarding once you get your hang of it. So I love that. I'm so excited. Yeah, I think there's one thing about entrepreneurship that if you like to adapt and if you like to like be curious, that it definitely lends well. And I feel like I wanted to adapt. Like I'm really adaptable on all of my resumes. And I remember a manager going like, that's not really a skill. I'm like, is it? Are you sure? Like, because I loved it so much. So I'm so excited to hear that your first year, you're like, oh wait, this is like, I love kind of like spinning a couple plates and enjoying this process and doing it that way. So again, congrats on your first year. This is beautiful.
Thank you. And thanks for your support too. It means a lot. And yeah, the topic that we're going to talk about today, I was already becoming a dietitian, but then started to have my own hormone and GI issues. And it was a super isolating experience. I decided to go off of birth control because I was having some side effects from it when I was in college. And my body just absolutely revolted. And honestly, it was probably 15 years worth of symptoms that had just been masked by birth control of why I went on it in the first place. That then when I came off of it and I didn't really know how to properly do so, all hell just broke loose in my body. I had some weight change, I had fatigue, I had heart palpitations, I had acne for the first time, all of these things that just did not align with how I historically felt as a quote unquote healthy looking person. And I came across this topic actually 5 years ago when I was really like in the thick of it. And some of the first books that I read, one was called In the Flow by Alyssa Vitti. And she talks a lot about cycle syncing. And it really is this like Ayurvedic concept of living in cycles and rhythms. And, we're dynamic individuals. Our bodies don't function on the same 24-hour clock as men do. And I'm speaking to women that are assigned at birth. Today, specifically when we talk a little bit more about gender differences, but even just having this expectation of how you should feel the same every single day, or how your productivity should be the same every single day. And that's not true. And I talk a lot about self-compassion in my practice. And this to me is kind of a framework or a gentle guideline that just really helps us to tap into those rhythms and embrace that, our hormones are our superpower. They don't have to be this debilitating, awful thing. It's something that we all get to live with because we could potentially create a human, which in my eyes is like an incredible thing. Wild thing.
Talk about a superpower.
Yeah, exactly. But just, I like that this allows us to really tune into more of what's going on in our bodies, because I think a lot of us, whether we've been on any type of hormonal birth control or not, we're really ignoring a lot of things that are going on beneath the surface on a day-to-day basis and not listening to our bodies. So I like that this cycle syncing concept just allows us to tap in and just be a little bit more observant. How am I feeling? Where am I at? Okay, this is supportive. Oh, this didn't work out this month. Now I know this is information. Just kind of leaning into those rhythms more specifically.
Beautiful. I love the way Nora's talking here about how we can just be playful with this. I think that's a really good, boundary you want to set at the top of this episode, for the fact that, we're going to just be digging into this concept of cycle syncing, but it's really about helping you to empower yourself through like making sure you feel good. So I talk a lot about the feel good first approach to anything in life and in your business. If we feel good, we're going to be more likely to do all the things that are on our to-do list or all the ways we want to feel. But if we feel like crap, we don't know why, we just kind of sit within it, it's going to be hard in that way. And I think one of the things that I love the most about even talking about the self-compassion is that cycle syncing can be this permission of sorts. Like I like to, like, for instance, when I'm menstruating and I realize that I'm feeling maybe fearful or like just like my energy's low, I'll call it my gremlin day. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
today I know that I'm likely going to want to vent and bitch a little bit and not really like get into it. And I'm going to know that I can allow this day for the fact that my hormones are completely shut down and that things are just like starting to happen, and that it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that I'm not good at what I do. It doesn't mean that I can't provide good coaching today. It's just, I know that this is something that's going to be going on, and I allow that to happen. So when we talk about superpower, it goes, we're working with our body. And I think that's like this health first approach, is that a lot of what we were taught in a lot of ways isn't what actually our body can do. And I think I love that you started right here at the top talking about, we're just different than men. And unfortunately, most of our work styles have been built off of their circadian rhythm, the way in which men's bodies work. But even too, this is where we can take our power back in a lot of ways. So before we touch base, I want to just shout out your podcast with Monica for the fact that we're going to be, lightly getting through a lot of things, talking about like making decisions, all the things, but the Flow State is the name of the podcast. Norah and Monica Groney, a fellow entrepreneur as well, it talk all about this. So if you in general feel like you got like a fire in your belly by what we talk about today, you have a bingeable podcast that goes nitty gritty for all of my science nerds out there. You're going to hear all of the things. So know that everything we talk about today gets to be like a trailer for what you get to do to hop on over to the Flow State.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I love doing the podcast and having a free resource for people. Again, I think this is information that everyone deserves to have access to. It shouldn't be under lock and key. It shouldn't be something that we have to have a pay lock on. We all deserve this. We can't change the education that we've received up until this point, but the fact that we can have it going forward and maybe change the outcome for future generations, our niece, our daughters, our friends, our sisters, whoever, it's really, really important to me to spread this menstrual empowerment. So thank you for shouting it out. We love doing it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's talk about why we were taught that we should be refreshed every single day, that we should be able to be as productive as we were the day before. So in general, why was the 9 to 5, what was it built off of? Is it truly detrimental for women to follow that, or menstruating people to follow that? And then thinking about long term, if we're only just pushing ourselves in the 9 to 5, is it bad for us? Or is it something that we can actually work with?
Totally. Yeah. And I think even just being able to call it out too and acknowledge that it's a thing is kind of the first step. Even when you were saying that about your gremlin day, it's calling that out and just allowing space for it, I think is kind of the first step. Whether all of these things are in our control to change or not to change them is a totally different thing. But today, I want to give everyone some tools where, okay, maybe we are in different parts of our cycle. These are things that we can try to do during that time. And maybe these are things that we can try not to do during that time. But yeah, totally. I mean, right? Women were not always in the workforce. Women were the homemakers, and they were not the ones in the office or going to the 9 to 5. So things were really built around a man's world, more patriarchal constructs. And again, that's not something that might be in our power to change unless you choose a workplace, or if you are an entrepreneur, when you do have the capacity to create and build your life around your cycle. And again, this is an invitation. This is a soft, gentle framework. It doesn't need to be these rigid rules. I really, in my practice, try to avoid any sort of restrictive diets, elimination diets. Anytime we implement rules, it's just we're hardwired to want to break them. So taking all of these tips and things today as just an invitation and a gentle guide for us to implement if it's and when it's appropriate. But yeah, there are things that we can do, even if you are in an environment that is a 9 to 5. And we're going to talk about that today.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I think a couple of things let's just throw out some things that are expected of us in a 9 to 5 that may not just function with us in the flow. So, productivity is definitely one. And so we're going to get into the phase in just a moment, but if you were to tell someone who is beating themselves up off the fact that one week they'll be on a high and getting through lots of things, and the next week they just can't get a damn thing done, and they feel like they're just no good at productivity, or they're just never going to be enough in that way. What would you tell them about how cycle syncing might be supportive to kind of debunk that myth of what we've been taught?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just understanding that we can't function at that level at all times. Like that is a surefire recipe for burnout. We can't have that same like all pedal to the metal, full-fledged effort all the time. And that is in all arenas too. I think, some of the more common things that I see in my practice are people who are getting burnt out and fatigued because they are trying to do all of those things all of the time. And we truly can't. It's not a sustainable practice. But yeah, even just having that understanding and expectation of, okay, I am going to have weeks when I'm absolutely crushing it. I'm in the flow. I am so on point. My articulation, my communication skills are amazing. I feel so confident. And then we're also going to have times where it's like, I can't even keep my focus. I'm experiencing brain fog. I am just low. And seeing this dynamic part, it's like, oh, right, I'm in this week leading up to my cycle. No wonder I'm feeling different. Things are shifting in my body. My chemistry is internally changing. And that is going to alter, our cognition, our concentration, our articulation, our productivity. So yeah, definitely just even understanding that there are these nuances or differences in the different phases that we're experiencing can help someone to understand why they can be working at this level one week and then not the next.
Totally. For anyone not watching YouTube, she got her hand up high and her hand down low. So just know that like the idea is that I think the biggest part of this is that we aren't robots. And I feel like you would say the same. And maybe even this could be helpful aside from cycle syncing to all men to be like, you don't have to be a robot every single day, even with what is expected of you. So I think there's just a side of going like, hey, guess what? We have a rhythm, we have a pattern, and you're being absolutely like, a bitch of a boss if you're getting pissed at yourself on your menstruation week that you're not as good as you were during your luteal or your ovulation phase. So being able to think about those just a little bit differently. So essentially cycle syncing is going to be supportive in helping us with our hormones. But I feel like all of this comes around to like us just being in tune with them in the first place. So before we would get into cycle syncing specifically, what might be a couple of things, like let's say 3 to 5 things that I could be doing right now as a normal functioning, like not needing to get fully going to the doctor, just going like, okay, what can I just do in general to make sure my hormones are in balance?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one thing for me is just getting enough nutrition. So not even diving into the specifics of what kind of nutrition, you need to be getting enough nutrients in the first place. Otherwise, your body is going to be in this just constant state of stress all of the time if you're under eating. The same goes with over exercising. So again, if your output is higher than your input, and that's a consistent thing, and you're doing this during all phases, that's going to likely backfire. So that for some individuals can look like weight loss resistance. It can look like more of this brain fog. It can even lead to more issues like thyroid issues or hair loss and PCOS. So that, I think those two big things are really, really important when it comes to just having happy hormones in general. I do really like people to take a quality multivitamin. That's where, so I'm a medical advisor, and our podcast is from Maria Wellness, which is a PMS elixir, and the nutrients in it, especially magnesium, our body is mostly depleted from magnesium. It's not very rich in our soil, and our body uses it for every single energy producing reaction in our body. And stress is one of the biggest depleters, as well as birth control. So a lot of us.
That's fun. Of course it is. I remember when I read that about magnesium, and I think like spinach and kale have a lot of magnesium in there, but I was thinking like, I got to throw that in everything because I feel like stressed out, and like, and in general, I think this plays to the fact that Nora's saying like, do a multivitamin, because it's pretty hard to, one, not deplete it, and two, like get it in a potent form. So like being able to have that support is big.
Yeah. And for me, it's just a security blanket too. But I see when people do implement a quality multivitamin, just having more regular cycles, less of those hormone issues, because again, it needs the nutrients in order to build all of our happy hormones. So those three really big things. Stress is just an unavoidable. And I think having things in your life that are outside of, a lot of people are like, oh, I exercise for stress relief. And I'm like, that's still a form of stress. It's quote unquote good stress. But if that's the only way that you are relieving your stress, we need to find another outlet. Do you enjoy coloring? Do you need to do a brain dump at the end of the night and end things on a gratitude list? Do you need to shake it out and have some dance, even if nobody's watching? Like
one of my favorite ones, for sure.
Yeah, something for you that, it doesn't need to be what everybody else does for stress management. It literally, like, take a hot bath, go to the sauna, like get your nails done if that's what does it for you, where you notice a shift in your body. To me, having that as a very regular daily practice is the most important thing that we can be doing, not only just for our hormones, but just for our overall health status. I personally believe that stress and the inflammation is the driver of more of heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's disease, things where, I don't know about you, but I want to live a quality life. I don't care how long I'm here for, but I want those years to be full of life while I am here.
You're preaching to the choir. I had a grandmother who had Alzheimer's, and like even too, there's such heart disease and diabetes in my own family. Even, losing my dad early, there's just that feeling of like, okay, what is it? Like, I think that I had always been intrigued by health. Yes. And then within that, like, just like looking at, what could happen when I just am intrigued instead of like actually activating it within myself. It was like, okay, let's take these next steps. And especially with stress, I think this is a bigger deal for the fact that, like, I come from like sports and pushing yourself, and like, if you didn't sweat or like kill it, or you're not sore the next day, you didn't work hard enough, and all of the things. And even too, I remember when I was in high school specifically, I tend to get a little red in the face when I'm working pretty hard. And it was like one of those things where like a coach would be like, work as hard as Raterman, look at her go. And I'm just like my thyroid's probably helping me. Like, I look like I work harder than everybody else. So there was just like this, like pushing yourself is also baked into, I think, health, which is why whenever I'm like, okay, breath work, or hey, let's talk about rejuvenating stress relief versus active stress relief, kind of those two kind of phases. Yeah. Someone's like, I guess I'll breathe. Like, I guess I'll do this thing, just because it's still that hustle mentality, even within health. And the first time I did breath work, didn't understand it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this is completely different. Or meditation, even too, like all of these stillness, but like bringing your levels down. And this is a whole nervous system talk, which maybe we'll have Norah come back and we'll talk nervous system. But the idea of stress reduction has like two phases. The active, in my opinion, this is just me throwing it out there, but I'm sure there's a better scientific term. Like, active is being like running, going, like getting your heart rate up, releasing those things. The other side of it is like realizing that you might be really activated, you're feeling like, overstimulated, and that might be like literally closing your eyes and like paying attention to what's feeling tense and what's not. And it's hard to slow down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great point to call out. And we have so many similarities too. I lost my dad almost 2 years ago, and like a lot of his health things, for me, especially studying nutrition, it's like, how much of this really could have been prevented or better managed throughout the course of his life. And obviously I can't change those things, but it does inspire me to help others and hopefully mitigate a lot of those things. But it's just such a big conversation. But I would love to share like some of these tangible things. And nervous system support is key. I love that that's trending.
I think it's the more I see them, I'm going to be sending you all the time. Every time I see someone talk about nervous system support, I'm like, it's it's going to keep happening. It's gonna be so
Exactly.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like your thought process too of that, like active stress relief versus passive or just inactive time. And yeah, from this hustle culture or from even work environment, everybody wants to be productive all the time, and we can't do that. And a lot of us don't know how to do nothing, or like, how do we feel uncomfortable in that stillness or quietness. And it doesn't have to be just meditation. I know for some, yeah, like breath work or doing something a little bit more, keeping your mind busy while you're doing that can be helpful. If meditation isn't your thing, know that you're not broken there. You just might need to find a different form for you to make it work. But definitely like having more of those in the passive kind of restful stress relief section would be really, really beneficial.
I love that. I love that. All right. So we've already decided part 2, we're going to have her come on to
Nervous
talk about nervous system. We'll make sure it happens.
Love it.
Like, I wanted to hop into cycle syncing, and you know, we talked a little bit about like kind of how we're like people are learning this, and even to Alyssa actually went to my health coaching certification. She like she was like a pioneer of like making it your own. Like she took like a certification, then kept going. And like even too before I read Woman Code. I haven't read In the Flow just yet. But I think the biggest part of this is that, you know, I want to make it clear. It's like health is not finished. Like we still have not figured out how our bodies work. Like I share a space with my fiance who is a nurse, and he's like, I don't know about cycle syncing. Like I don't know about these things. Like a lot of this information is so new, and that's exactly why like seeing this as a tool can be really helpful. So let's start at the top.
Yeah.
Thinking, what the heck is it? Like, if I have never thought about it before, how can I start?
Yep, absolutely. So in general, it is trying to do supportive things for the different phases of our menstrual cycle. That is more to exercise, different foods, even social outings. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the work business side of things. And those different arenas in this more cyclical nature can again help your body, especially if you have irregular periods or maybe they're missing, if you were on birth control. So important kind of caveat here is that if you are on hormonal birth control, your body is not going through these 4 phases throughout the month. Even when you get a bleed, it's actually called a withdrawal bleed. It's not a true period. And most, I will generalize, you are not ovulating when you're on hormonal contraceptives. So you might not experience these same fluctuations that I'm going to be talking about today, but that doesn't mean that you can't cycle sync. And I'm going to share how you can use another outside framework in order to get in, like, where do we start if I don't have a period, if I'm on birth control, or I have irregular cycles, how can I know what phase that I'm in or I should be in? So really, really interesting fact. Our menstrual cycles on average are about 28 days. There's some variation, anywhere between 21 days to 35-ish days is normal. And also that depends on what stage of life you're in, puberty, your most fertile years, or if you're in perimenopausal stage of your life, and that can happen at any time. So depending on when those stages are is also going to fluctuate how long your cycles themselves are. But the average moon cycle is 29.5 days. So pretty cool that they overlap a lot.
I do love that. I feel like that I've had this conversation, then I've had some clients who are on birth control, and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do about this? And having the moon cycle be that supportive place is really cool.
Exactly. So we use the new moon to line up with when we would have our bleed or our menstrual phase. And that is a start of new beginnings. And that's right in line with what our bleed is doing. So the first day that you start bleeding is actually the first day of your cycle, the first day of your period. And that's true bleeding, not like spotting in the days leading up to it. The first day you have true flow is number 1. From being on birth control for so long, to me, it was the end of my cycle because it was the last row of the pill pack when I would start to bleed. So like, it's polar opposite. That's the start. So new moon, new beginnings, same with your menstrual cycle. And this is the best time in this first week or so. So again, bleed length can also vary from person to person. Anywhere from about 3 days to 8 days is completely normal. So this,
I feel like
this
I'm
will
like a
vary.
5, 3, like
Yeah.
I'm like a 5 area. That's usually where I'm at for sure.
Yeah, I'm 5 as well. They used to be 8 days when I was coming off of birth control, and it took over a year for my body to start inching down and getting more and more regular. So just an understanding too for how long it can really take your body to get back into its true rhythm after being on hormonal birth control. For anyone who's even thinking about it or going through that journey, especially if you would like to have a family someday, I honestly recommend at least 6 months before you are going to try to conceive. Up to, even for some individuals, it takes 2 years to get their periods back. Just as an FYI, which is crazy. But just
I
again,
have a lot of friends
understanding.
who are doing that. It's so hard. It's not simple. It's not
Yeah,
simple. I've thankfully been off it for over a decade, which has been nice. And
yeah,
and then now just slowly learning new things along the way. But I think I don't think we're going to come out and say like, you shouldn't be on birth control. That's not what we're
no,
going with here. But there is a power in allowing your body to do what it was supposed to. And like, if you find that like you're intrigued by this, of course, you're going to talk to your doctors and talk about it. But the idea, if you're intrigued by this, don't expect like this, like, okay, I'm off and it's done. Like there's almost like a detox period, and it can be like, just like Norah said, up to 2 years. Like it can
yeah.
take a while.
It looks different for everyone too. So I've had people come off and they get pregnant within 3 months, have a healthy baby, everything is fine. But I've also helped a lot of individuals in the other camp where it has taken a lot longer. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But there are a lot of benefits to cycling naturally. There are a lot of benefits when we ovulate, including our brain health, our cognitive health, our bone health, our heart health, all of the things. So my whole approach is an informed choice, just knowing all of your options and then making your own decision and what you truly feel comfortable doing. So even if you choose to stay on some type of hormonal birth control, you can still do this. Just use that new moon as your bleed. So going into that, yeah, exactly. We see the menstrual phase as like this wintering month. You might feel like you want to quote unquote hibernate a little bit more, turning more inwards, more reflective time. And this can be a really, really, really great time to just tap into your intuition, your feelings, and see, where do I want to go in my business? What kind of things do I want to focus on for this next menstrual cycle, this next month, this phase of my year, of my cycle in general? You might be craving more alone time. You might not want to be as social as other times during the month, and just tuning into that, being aware. A more restorative practice can be really helpful. There's actually research even showing doing more high intensity and running high cardio events can be not as great for our bodies during this time. Lifting is excellent. You just want to have more extended rest periods. We put on more muscle mass during this time, but just noticing again, like what your personal energy needs are. For myself, I actually feel the best mental clarity. I feel the most like myself when I'm on my bleed. And that's because our hormones are at our lowest. So just because
We're like men during our
Mhm.
menstrual cycle, which I find to be so funny.
Yeah,
The time that we're like all like sharing tampons or trying to find things, we're men. Our hormones make us men for a little while.
yeah, we might feel just a little bit more even, but again, this is so individualized. So really seeing how you feel during this time is really, really important. But maybe again, using this framework to say, I'm really going to brainstorm big ideas for what I want to do in my business, in my life right now. This is the best time to do it.
I would totally agree. I think for like, and I love the idea of looking at this as seasons even too. So she's saying menstruation is winter. Oh, I always mix them up. I know ovulation is summer. Luteal comes next, right?
Follicular. All good. All good.
So close. But in general, like being able to think about them as seasons. So like, spring blooming and we'll get through each of these. So I think this is really helpful.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm like, if I'm menstruating, and even to any day now, so of the recording of this podcast, like planning is the thing. And I'm reflective and planning. I'm like, okay, so I know that I liked this. Now I want to change this for the next time. So allowing that to be, if there were a time to do this, or if there were a time to make space for this, it would be this week. That's kind of usually my approach and even too, I think like depending on how my periods feel, I'll decide like, okay, how well did I do this month of like just taking care of myself? I think like the worse of the period, the more I'm like, did I hydrate well? Did I sleep well? For instance, I didn't know until about 3 years ago that my enjoyment of sipping coffee until 2 o'clock and then starting my like work day actually was, or not work day, actually starting my food for the day was awful for me. And I was like, and then like once I started to eat within the first hour of the day, when the period came around, it was chill vibes. It was like it was here and it was gone, and it was like this difference between having to take like Motrin every single time I had a period versus whenever I like actually every single day was like, all right, I want to feed my hormones this morning.
I love that.
The time that the period came around, it wasn't this awful experience. So like, at least for me,
that's so tangible
for everyone, right?
Yeah. Caffeine.
What do they even call it? I'm forgetting now. Like when you don't eat until, thank you. Like that is a male thing. And I think that's a lot to be said too. A lot of the science that's put out is usually for a male body first, mostly because this is where Nora and I connected at the park the other day, where a lot of this stuff, like they don't put women through it because they're worried about like our fertility and all of the things, but then they like put a whole bunch of rules that aren't exactly backed by science.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're too complex to study because of your hormones. And it's like, well, then you should be studying us. Like that's the whole freaking point. And maybe helping us to understand. Yeah. Dr. Stacey Sims is awesome, leading the game in a lot of this women's research, especially in sport, and so fascinating. And I'm so grateful people are out there advocating for it because it's really important. Really, really important. But yeah, intermittent fasting is not for you if you are in your fertile years. If you are a postmenopausal woman, it is okay. It kind of have a lot of benefits, especially around diabetes and insulin control, helping prevent things like Alzheimer's. So yeah, in those fertile years, this is not something that we should be doing. In my opinion, truly, any sort of restrictive diet is not going to be great on your hormones. You're going to see health implications on your hormones, and whether that's not having regular cycles or they're really heavy or all of the things, it can impact your fertility. So not the time to be messing around. This is where we really need to nourish our bodies, our souls, and support our body. Yeah.
Beautiful. So first stage, winter, menstruation. In general, this is your time to ask yourself, like, what do you have the energy for? And like, it's a permission slip of sorts, where if you are feeling fatigued, it's probably normal. It's all right. So being able to do what feels good. Maybe you test out a weightlifting and maybe you don't go as heavy, or maybe you feel good and you decide to go heavier. That's great. But like there's no punishment for needing a nap during menstruation. There's no punishment for messing up and having a typo in an email, just for the fact that your brain is not going to be as potent like as it could be in another phase.
Totally. And to support your like content planning and social media strategy, like this could be a time where having things on autopilot could be really beneficial, where like you might not feel like showing up on your social accounts during this time. You may not want that social engagement. So if you have things pre-planned, if you have those posts ready to go and all you literally have to do is schedule it, like do that for this phase when you know you might not be feeling it. You might not be as creative.
Love a good promotion for batching. Love
right?
it.
Like shameless plug.
I love that. We would like put a stamp on it. It's perfect. Yeah. Okay, so we're going into spring. What's our next phase? Which
exactly is follicular. So technically the whole first half of our cycle is the follicular phase, but we have our bleed, the menstrual phase, in the first half or so, again, depending on all these individual variations. But we have those menstrual bleed days first. Although that is part of the follicular phase, we're really using this time as once your bleed stops until you ovulate as the true follicular phase. So this springtime, you might notice, more energy, like we're recording this in the spring. How are you feeling? To me, it's like this buzzy, almost tangible energy of excitement and refreshment, and just things are blooming. A lot of things are happening. So using this time to really plan, like dreaming up those new ideas and going after it, starting that beginning of the execution and going after dream clients, starting to do more of the social engagement type of things, having more conversations. This is an excellent time to be tapping into that springtime energy. And yeah, we're feeling more energized than we were the week prior.
Beautiful. I like thinking about like your plans blooming, or like the vision or the clients that you want. Like this is a time where you're starting to bloom, and being able to, I think about it in an activating way. You've been watering it for a while now. Like there's no time like the present to execute on it, to start playing with it for sure. How would we like take care of ourselves in general, like as far as like health wise? What would be some basic things that during the follicular phase that can be supportive?
Yeah, for sure. So in we did like a whole cycle syncing episode on flow state too, where I talk even more about the specific foods and activity and things as well. I'm really focusing on the business side of things for our entrepreneurial
Shameless plug for that episode. So full of good information. Go check it out for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's episode 3 of our first season. Actually, it was very early on. I can double check that, but other things in the springtime, especially in terms of movement, if that would be helpful to just kind of chat through briefly. More of our like trying out a new dance class, or maybe doing some more actual classes. I'm not a huge advocate. I know this might offend Jamie especially, but like F45 and Orange Theory can be really, 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 really stressful on our bodies.
Yes.
But if you do enjoy a class like this, and our ovulatory phase are the times to be doing that. But yeah, continuing to do your lifting. You want to save more of like the endurance events and things for a little bit later on in our cycle. And then even food wise, tuning in. What are the spring veggies? What are the spring things that we can be doing? And I like that. Again, different framework for the best diet to me is the most diverse diet. So if you're always eating the same 5-10 meals, try and spice things up, like tuning in. What is fresh right now? Even if you can't or don't have access to these fresh herbs at a farmer's market, or if that's not accessible to you, that's totally fine. Frozen foods are amazing. They're harvested at their peak ripeness. They're flash frozen, so they actually lock in more nutrients. But doing things like our asparagus, which is in absolute season right now. So fruits and veggies and things, and even rotating your proteins can be a nice thing during this time through all of our phases. But again, just an easy way to start having a little bit more diversity in your routine and your diet, so we're not, again, this like stagnant one level of operation.
Yeah, I love that. No, it's funny how so I will post regularly on my Instagram that I'm like popping into Orange Theory. I do enjoy it. But even a couple, like, I don't know if it was you, it was somebody else actually was like, so I thought you were cycle syncing, and like what, how have you been doing that, if you remember there? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? And it was a whole discussion about, if you're pushing yourself really hard, I think, what is it, over like 40 minutes or something for women, that you can you're upping your stress, where they might hold on to fat in your body, different aspects of that. So there's a part of that. And I think my correction was like, okay, I'm not going to go crazy. Maybe I'll walk today instead of run, like while I was still being a member, but having the wherewithal to know that like that push isn't always there. So, okay, spring, we're focusing on variety as much as we can. Not only in our food, but also in like how we might get active in the day to day, which is beautiful. Ovulation, our summertime. What do we do next?
Exactly. So this, in most individuals' bodies, feels like the most energy, where we are feeling super confident. This is our fertile period if you are cycling naturally. So you are primed for that reason to even appear differently towards others. But that is when our communication skills are really, really high. We're great at communicating and articulating at this time. So even timing up, if you do work in a corporate setting, if you need to have maybe your roundtables or your review for the year, Can you see if it correlates or aligns with this time in your cycle, or giving presentations or doing guest podcast speaking or anything like that, where you're going to feel better. You're probably going to be a little bit less critical of yourself and feel more confident. You're definitely more outgoing. So in terms of the social side of things, this would be an excellent time to do more networking events, hanging out with friends, even like plan trips around this. This is the time when you're going to want to be around other people. Co-working, great thing to be doing right now, collaborating with others. And again, just harvesting this absolute peak energy while it's here. This is the time to really go after it.
Beautiful. So if you're ready to be visible, you're ready to be out there, your ovulation. I feel like summer is sexy. So like you're feeling the vibes. You want to be on the dance floor. Like that's kind of the feeling when it comes to like thinking about how this all plays out. So I love that. I love that. I feel like I want to move on, even though we have a lot to say, but what is our last phase? What is our last season?
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, for the classes and stuff, like ovulatory is really the best time. If you do enjoy any of the HIIT workouts or classes specifically, like that is the best time to do it if you would like to participate. So just knowing that it might be a little bit of a shorter window than you once thought, but again, that's going to be helpful in, I don't know about you. I really love varying my workouts throughout the month. I don't always feel like doing the same things. So it's nice where it's like, okay, this week I'm going to go to a yoga class. This week I'm going to do a HIIT class. This week I want to go for a run or a bike ride or go to a dance class, something different.
Totally. I agree with that. And like, even I definitely have a bit of a regimen. I've gotten to that point, but I think there's a side where the way I've taken it is going like, don't expect, we're not going to PR this right now. We're going to like, let's be kind here. Like knowing that there's a lot of the mindset of when I begin the workout is we're going to be extra kind right now, or we're trying to push ourselves. And one thing of going to even something like Orange Theory for a while is just watching how people compete with each other. And it was one of those, it was a nice little symbol or signal to me to be like, you're here for you. You're here for you. How can you use this as a challenge for you to focus solely on you? And I think that can be that, but I would definitely say the Gemini in me, like class pass me all day. I could try. I love that, but I think I've leaned a little bit more regimen lately, but knowing it can be applied in different ways. Yeah.
I always give the invitation to, or asking yourself this question of, I'm not really feeling this right now. I'm going to do it for 5 minutes. And if after 5 minutes, I want to stop, I absolutely can. I can walk away. I can discontinue whatever I'm doing. I would say the majority of the time, you're going to start to feel really good after those 5 minutes, and you're going to continue. And even knowing like, okay, how do I typically feel at the end of this workout? Am I gassed? Like, do I need to come home and take a nap? To me, that's a very, very clear sign that it's not a good fit for your body, or maybe it's not the right time of day or the right time in your cycle. I tried Soul Cycle when I first moved up to Boston, and like worked out at 6 a.m., would come home and would need to go back to bed. My hormones were a wreck. I was killing myself and using up our natural energy, our cortisol, our stress hormone. It's also our survival hormone. And so when we do a lot of these, especially if you're doing things fasted, if you are doing it first thing in the morning, it's likely not the best fit for you. Honestly, we want to be fed. We want to have something in our bellies that's going to fuel our workout to help mitigate a lot of that stress response. And that's going to help our hormones. And if you are in hormonal dysfunction, I know you were talking about the timing. I recommend people limit their movement to 30 minutes if they are in hormonal dysfunction. Personally, for me, when I was really going through it, I discontinued all of my exercising because I could not. I was just overexerting myself no matter what I was doing. And I just needed to rest and walk and just nourish my body and slow the heck down. And that's what finally allowed me to heal. So it's not always it's not what I would have chosen. It's not what I wanted to do. I love being active. That's what I needed in that time.
Totally.
Not a
You're
forever
choosing
thing.
your body over what was like, what other people would say would be a productive health routine. Like it was like, no, there's something going on. I don't need to do anything until like I figure out what this is, which is a hard choice in a lot of ways, especially with diet culture, different things like that. Like it is a hard choice, but it doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing by going, okay, let's introspection, let's figure it out, let's
Exactly.
research, let's move our way. I know I can get back to that, but in my own way. And I think that's it's an empowering piece of this for sure.
Yeah. 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 Our last phase, the second half of our cycle, is our luteal phase, or fall, autumn, whatever you call it. And that's approximately 2 weeks long. So this is our longest phase that we have. So this is really the execution time. Like, we are finishing out those projects that we dreamt up during our menstrual phase. We started planning during our follicular phase. We're going after it in our ovulatory phase and our luteal, beginning of our luteal phase. And by the end of our cycle, that's when we really want to tie up those projects, bring things to completion, start reflecting on the past month and say, yeah, a little bit more of those introspective questions like you were alluding to in the menstrual phase even as well. But yeah, like, how did things go this month? What can I do differently for the next month or the next cycle? Again, I work with a lot of fertility clients, and if they find out, oh, I'm not pregnant right now, and then they get their period, it's like this huge wave of disappointment. And I actually say, no, this is a new cycle. This is the chance that you could conceive this month. So even that quick reframe of like, okay, use that bleed as like a reset button, tap into that energy, the new beginnings, new whatever you need, new energy to help get you going. But yeah, our serotonin, which is one of our major feel-good hormones, dips significantly during this phase. So we might have more cravings. Our energy needs increase during this time. So you might be craving especially more carbohydrates, especially. So making sure that you are incorporating enough of them. Otherwise, this is another very common thing that I see in my practice is people try to eat less during the day, and then they end up overeating or binging at night because they haven't adequately fueled their tank during the day. So knowing that in this last half of your cycle, you really do need to increase your energy, incorporate some sweet potato, do some quinoa, do some whole grains that are going to actually satisfy you. Adequate protein, always, but that's going to really help with your satiety, like that fullness factor, and your energy, help to prevent more of those cravings, which is also going to help with the PMS side of things and help our mood. So it is like a domino effect for sure. But yeah, boundaries are super, super important during this phase, like knowing when to say no, knowing when to say yes, checking in with your body. We're very task and detail oriented. So again, like wrapping those projects up, doing the things that you need to do to bring them to completion is really, really important.
Beautiful. I feel like this is like, it's really fun to think of us having a season every month, or like 4 seasons every month. I think like thinking about it that way can be really supportive. So would you be up for like a quick fire? Like when, like if I like want to ask you a couple questions of like when in general, what cycle, what part of the month would these type of like things work really well? And like we're going for probability here more than absolutes, but being able to play with it. So in general, when would be the best time to launch, like to officially open doors to a program? What part of the phase would be best to like host a masterclass, let's say?
Okay, hosting masterclass, I would definitely say around that ovulation, like your peak energy, again, speaking, you want to be social, tapping into that. Launch, I think, could kind of vary. So if your launch includes more like back end side of things, not a lot of face-to-face time, then I don't think it's that specific. But if you know, okay, when I launch, I'm going to have a lot of calls coming in, I'm going to have applications, I'm going to need to be communicating a lot, I would leave that for like my follicular and my ovulatory phase, where I can really tap in again to my energy and be more social, be able to show up for people. And we said like follicular phase, going after those new clients, getting on calls and things. So I would really say follicular and ovulatory phase for true launch.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
What about if we're like challenging ourselves to be more creative and put ourselves out there? What phase would be the most supportive?
Yeah. I think menstrual could be great for just tuning in, especially to that creativity, dreaming up new ideas, and then maybe executing some of those ideas again in more of the follicular phase, even through the first half of our luteal phase. But I like that dreaming phase or creativity, even in our menstrual phase.
I feel that all the time. That's definitely it. what about when we're going to be our most clear and decisive? Like when like being a good decision maker, let's say if we are, bringing in a new client or new team member, or even making a big decision about changing something within our business.
I would say like early luteal phase, actually. So really key component that happens after ovulation is our progesterone levels increase. Progesterone is our calming hormone. So we might be like a little bit less buzzy and jumpy, a little less anxious if you are prone to some anxiety. So where you could really make more rational, clear-headed decisions, hiring someone, refining a process, I would say early luteal would be a great time to do that.
Oh my gosh, amazing. This
Yeah.
is, again, like all supportive. Just separately, really quick, Nora, do you need to leave it right at 2, or can I ask you like
I'm
a few
okay.
questions?
Yep, I'm perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So I think, we're getting a sense, we know what it is. So for anyone who hears all of these ways that they can work with their bodies, how it all is going to function, and goes, oh, but what if I decided to launch and I got a masterclass on my period day? I didn't realize it was going to be that day, or something happened where I just had to get it out at this time. Like, what kind of advice would you give someone who's like, well, I guess I didn't make it work this time. Like, how would you help them work through that?
Yeah, again, like it's a true framework. Nothing is going to break if you don't follow these guidelines or recommendations. And again, also knowing your individual self. Like if I feel really amazing during my bleed, but you don't, cool. Like when do you feel your best? And maybe that's just, again, starting to pay a little bit more attention. I'll ask people like, do you have any hormone symptoms? And they're like, no, I don't even know like what that would look like. And so that's fine, but maybe starting to just tune in. Oh, I'm noticing I'm a little bit more sensitive around this time of the month. I notice my sleep actually changes in my luteal phase. I notice that I want to go for a run during this early parts of my follicular phase, but not in my luteal phase. Different things where you might feel it, you might not, but nothing's going to break. So don't psych yourself out where like, okay, I start bleeding, I have a launch today, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you energetically feel capable and you are committed to that thing, do it. If you can plan in the future months, or maybe things don't go as planned, or maybe your launch flops, been there. How can we reflect, right? And just say, what did work, what didn't work? Not having this judgment, again, leaning on more self-compassion, being less critical of ourselves, and just seeing it as purely information. We don't need to blame it on our hormones. We don't need to blame it on, oh, I don't have willpower, I don't XYZ, whatever excuse you throw in there, or how you're talking to yourself. How you're talking to yourself is so important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I think that we're going back to this, and I think it's really important. Health is personal.
Yeah.
Even the way you run your business is personal. If you want it to be something longevity, that you're going to be able to be resilient, the more you make it your own is what this is about. And I just had Nora run through like, okay, this would be the best times of the month. And you go like, does that ring true for me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or is that something I'm going to test this month? Like this is what it is to like consistently just be a student of your body and your life is what makes this a superpower. Because I love to kind of tell clients like, I want to give you something and I want you to try it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, give you full permission to be like, fuck off, James, doesn't work for me. This is what I decided to do instead. And that's my job as a coach, is being able to like try something, hate it, but tell me what you're going to do instead to find whatever your rhythm is. And that's exactly what our body does. Like nobody, we all have similar organs and all the things, but nobody's perfectly works the exact same way. Totally. And I love to be able to have cycle syncing to just be able to in the morning go like, okay, I did all the things. Like I worked through all the things. Like, why am I still just feeling like not here or not clear? And be able to go like, okay, well, and it was funny, right before we got on, Nora was like, I saw your stories this morning. And like I said, any day now I'm going to be starting my menstruation phase. And I was like, I'm just so tired. And I'm like, okay, I don't need to expect more from myself today. I want to allow this to just give me the permission to see how, if I do 1 or 2 tasks, if I want to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's such a huge shift in entrepreneurship too. Like, we could work 24/7. There's always something you could be doing, nonstop to-do lists, but choosing those like top 3 need to do things on a daily basis, like what's going to move the needle for us? What's like actually needs to happen today? What would be nice if it happened? And just, yeah, being able to fall back on that when you're not feeling up for it, or like, can you have a nap today? Like, do you have space for that? Can you go and whatever? Like,
I have a planned nap today, so I can't wait for it.
amazing. I love that so much. But yeah, definitely having, again, some kindness towards yourself, because that's what's going to matter. And that's how you can stay consistent in your business and your life, showing up as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister, as a partner, all of the things. Like, that's how we can stay present too.
Perfect. I truly feel if everyone had like 80% self-compassion, like if we could just increase it, that like so many things would change in the world.
Yeah.
Norah, it has been such a blessing to have you on here and sharing all your knowledge. Before I pop up, I'd like to ask my guests, what does limitless mean to you?
I definitely think of like unlimited possibilities, like no ceiling, unlimited choices, opportunity.
I love it. We get to decide.
Yeah.
I love that. So Norah, tell us how we can stay in touch with you, how we might be able to work with you for anyone who's really interested in taking a deeper dive. Go ahead and share with us.
Thank you. Yeah, most active on my Instagram for sure. Just Nutrition with Norah. I think Jamie will put it in the show notes for me as well. And I work with individuals in both a group setting and also on a one-on-one basis. My group is called Harmonize, and it's exactly all of the things that we've been talking about today. I really help to support people that are going through any GI or hormonal transitions, especially whether that be coming off of birth control, if you have acne, if you have PCOS, if you have endometriosis, fertility stuff, any of those things going on, and then any existing GI issues. It's so incredibly common. And that's what I help to support people through a framework and in a community setting where you're not alone. That was the most challenging piece of my journey, was just feeling like I was broken and I was alone, yet it is so common. And just hearing that from other individuals being held in the space is really, really important, with me as your guide right there to support you as well. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I really find community to be such a big deal. And even I have many friends who've opened up about fertility and different things that they're doing, and like, there's no one out there. I'm like, I know people.
Exactly.
And it's so nice to have this feeling of not being alone, which I think is a lot of the reasons why I do the podcast, and even like people share online, just so that there's that feeling. So I'm so happy that you get to help people in that way. Norah, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so fun. Really appreciate it.